That's like the number one reason that a client will show up and be like sweaty, ready to melt down. They're like overwhelmed and confused and like, ah! Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for coming back. I don't know when this is getting uploaded, but this is the first video that we're filming of 2021, so happy new year to you. Today I wanted to talk about what you should expect from your first therapy appointment. This is a question that I would get relatively frequently in my personal life, but also something that clients of mine on their first appointment, they seem real nervous. So I thought this information could be useful to just like put into the ether in case you were wondering. So let's talk about it. Okay. So the first piece of advice that I wanted to give you guys on your first therapy appointment, be prepared to talk about yourself. Your therapist will have some questions for you and that should help kind of grease the works a little bit. But the number one thing that I notice is that clients will do the thing where they give you like a one-word answer and then they like look expectantly at you, hoping that you have something else to say. On my intake appointments, I give my clients, I call it my used car salesman spiel, like my disclaimers and all of my stuff that I think a person needs to know on their first appointment. But after I'm done with that, I'm done. I don't have anything else to say. And so your first appointment is for you to talk about the things that matter to you, the things that you want to address, the reason you decided to come to therapy in the first place. So don't be afraid to talk about yourself. I promise nobody will or should get mad at you for talking about what's on your mind and talking about what you want to work on and just talking about yourself in general. Even if it's little stuff, I always ask my clients silly questions, like what's your favorite TV show? What do you like to do in your free time? Because all of that is still useful information and good context for your therapist to have. So even if you're not comfortable delving into more personal stuff, it is totally okay to offer up information just about you generally, because the first appointment is information collecting, essentially. It might also be helpful to prep a few things, like a few key points that you want to hit beforehand. It's not uncommon for clients to come back for their second appointment and be like, dang it, as soon as I walked out, I realized that I had something that I wanted to say and I forgot to mention it or whatever. So doing some prep work before you go might be useful. It's not weird, it's not embarrassing, it's not awkward if you take notes on your phone, if you bring your journal, if you bring your planner, if you bring a post-it note, it doesn't matter. All the time people will say I'm so weird for bringing notes, and no, you're not. It's actually really helpful, especially when this stranger that you don't know is staring you in the face and you're nervous and uncomfortable. Of course you're going to forget things. So it's really helpful and totally not weird at all for you to bring notes if that's what works for you. But yeah, doing that prep work beforehand can be really helpful, especially if you are one of those people who's going to therapy because you know that something is off and you want to work on it, but you're not sure how to put that into words. Sitting and doing some journaling, thinking, reflecting, what the fuck ever about that can be good to give you a more concrete way to express that to somebody else, which kind of leads me into my second thing. Your first therapy appointment should not be anything super intense. Your intake session is really, like I said before, about getting to know you. You can sort of rest easy knowing that your therapist is not going to come at you with these really aggressive pointed questions or asking you to just put all of your deep, dark, traumatic bullshit on the table all at once. We understand that this is a really strange arrangement and that even in a therapy context, where it's normal for you to do that, it does take time for a person to trust you enough to do that. So your first appointment, there really should not be any pressure for you to disclose all of these deep, dark, scary, horrible things. If you want to, that's totally cool. That's always useful and helpful, but please don't feel like the expectation is that your therapist will be disappointed or frustrated with you. If you go in, just talk about yourself, give kind of a vague overview of what you want to work on, talk about the symptoms you're experiencing in day-to-day life, blah, blah, blah. We can delve into the deep-seated childhood trauma another time. The first therapy appointment really should be about you getting to know your therapist and your therapist getting to know you. And so along with that, if you have questions, if you are confused about something, if you want to know something about your therapist, please just ask. Unless you're crossing a line with a boundary, a privacy thing, if my clients ask me about my husband or something, I will give very limited, vague answers with that because it's boundaries saying you can't know too much about my life. But I'm happy to talk about my experience with therapy, how long I've been a therapist, my personal perspective on how I treat clients and how I work through issues, things that I enjoy doing for fun, just general regular stuff, TV shows that I enjoy watching and music and books and what the fuck ever. So if you have questions for your therapist and if that would help you feel more comfortable, definitely ask that. That's totally cool. If you ask a question, like I said before, that's a boundary crossing or is like too personal, your therapist will probably honestly just deflect you and give you a vague answer. My favorite thing to say when a client does that is, I'm more interested in what's going on with you. So yeah, feel free to ask questions and explore and kind of just get to know each other, because that's like the whole point. Number 3, this one's kind of boring. Expect some paperwork. The first session, if you didn't fill out your intake packet online beforehand, or if you didn't get the packet emailed to you or whatever, you will have to fill something out. Typically, this is questions like your name, date of birth, your address, just like boring bullshit. But there are also consents in there that you have to sign before you can sit down in the therapist's office. So like your consent to treat is basically where you check the box saying like, I acknowledge that there are risks and benefits and blah, 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 and I'm giving this therapist permission to therapize me, essentially. That's really important. And so, like I said, if you didn't fill it out online beforehand, you will have to fill it out when you get there, so keep that in mind. Sometimes it's helpful or necessary depending on your therapist, the way they do things. Sometimes you'll need your driver's license or some kind of ID, your insurance card. If your insurance is through somebody else, so like if your insurance is through like a spouse, a parent, then you also need their relevant information. So you'll also need the name, date of birth, and the address of the primary insured. So come ready to fill out paperwork and do some sort of boring nuts and bolts stuff first, because we have to situate that, like I said, before you are allowed to sit down and be therapized. Number 4, this one is like more of a tip than anything, but I want to encourage you to get there early. I say this for a couple of reasons. The first of which is that it is not uncommon for people to get lost, for people to have a hard time finding the office or to find like the building or like whatever. So it's really helpful to have like an extra 5 to 10 minutes of buffer room built in there, because the first appointment is like a little bit scary and nerve-wracking, and so the last thing that you need on your mind is like, fuck, they're gonna fire me as a client because I'm late and I don't know where I'm going and I can't find the office and I fucking hate this and I don't want to do this. That's like the number one reason that a client will show up and be like sweaty, ready to melt down. They're like overwhelmed and confused and like, and then they need a couple of minutes to like decompress before we can actually start talking about stuff. So give yourself some room, give yourself some time. It's not weird for you to sit in the parking lot on your car, in your car, on your phone. Sit in your car, just fuck off on your phone, mind your own business for a little while, and like take some deep breaths and calm down, because like I said, it's helpful to have that extra buffer room. And like I said before, if you need to fill out the paperwork, being early is great for that, because it's not eating into your appointment time, so you get the full either 50 or 60 depending on what your therapist does to talk about your stuff. Okay, the last thing that I want to give you as like advice, I guess, or like this is just sort of a warning, be prepared for some shit to come up. It's not uncommon during your first therapy appointment to talk about stuff that you have been suppressing. So those emotions will probably come to the surface. So it's really normal for that day and the couple days following for you to feel irritable, more emotional than you normally are, depending on the type of stuff you disclosed and how deep you went with what you decided to share. You can experience like body aches and pains. Some people have nightmares. Some people have sleep disturbances. Like having a hard time falling asleep, having a hard time staying asleep, stuff like that. There is a whole range of things that can happen to you on an emotional and a physical level after you go to therapy, because like I said, it's common for us in day-to-day life to sort of shove stuff down and not really acknowledge how we feel, especially if we're overwhelmed and especially if we don't feel like we have supportive, safe people to talk to. So when you open those floodgates, like expect some shit to come out of them. That's totally normal. That's totally cool. That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong or that like something bad is happening. That's actually good, because what that means is that you're headed in the right direction. In order for us to heal things, we have to feel them. Isn't that a cute little rhyme? So expect, like I said, some emotions to come up, for you to feel different than you normally do, for you to feel maybe more sad than you normally do. This is a really common one for people to come back and be like, fuck, I didn't realize how sad I was. And I'm like, yes, that will happen when you take the lid off of stuff. It's all going to come out somehow. So that's useful stuff to talk with your therapist about at your next appointment. They should validate the shit out of that and then sort of explore where that's coming from. And that's like a really great jumping off point for appointment number 2. Okay, so that's everything. I hope that this was helpful to you guys. I know that the first therapy appointment can be really scary and just feel weird. As somebody who has been on the other side of that exchange, I am well aware of how awkward and weird and frustrating and, annoying it is sometimes to have to go in and tell the story and talk about this stuff, but it is super, super worth it. And so I want to encourage you guys, if you are thinking about going to therapy and you've never gone, go. Like, look into it, see how it goes. The other like piece of advice that I wanted to close this video out with is that I tell people all the time, finding your therapist is like finding a perfect pair of shoes. It might take you a couple of tries before you find a perfect fit, but that does not mean that they're not out there. So if your first therapist after an appointment, 2 appointments, 3 appointments isn't a good fit, it's totally cool for you to be like, hey, not for me, goodbye. I would encourage you to let them know, like, please don't just ghost them because it's a lot of work for us. But I get it. Sometimes people don't want to do that. So if you are not comfortable, if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. That's totally cool. But there is another therapist out there who is a good fit for you, like 99% of the time. So keep trying, keep doing it because it's super worth it. So yeah, if you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel because we have fun educational stuff like this, but then we also do therapist reacts and cute stuff. I'll put that like up there, I think. And then share the video to help the channel grow and to help each other grow. And I'll see you guys next Saturday. Okay, bye.